Yeah, there's a bit of drama there, but anyway. Okay, so that's all that I have on beat. Anyone else have anything else? Nancy has dropped. Did she say she was going to drop?
I think she
did. We just lose her because we no longer have quorum to make decisions? Which is actually unfortunate because we're coming to the point of the meeting where I was hoping to get you guys to make some decisions. So, and I do apologize for not sending out my policy recommendations in advance, but it's been one of those weeks, Steve.
Nancy has a hard stop at 5.
Yeah, well, it's 4:11 now, so I'm hoping she'll be on. There we go.
Oh, wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong. I'm sorry. There you are. Nancy, how long will you be able to stay on? We do have a decision to make. You're muted.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm on till 5.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so with that, I'm going to move on to the VCB Affordable Long Drop RFA. So there was a webinar yesterday which clarified some things, and I have some recommendations, and I'm going to show them on the screen now, and you guys can vote on whichever ones you're comfortable with. If you want to think about some of them for longer, then you're certainly welcome. I will circulate the document, and you can do a vote via email. But yeah, I think, yeah. So let me just start with that. Okay, can you guys see this?
Make it bigger, please.
Hang on. How's that?
Good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. So, basically, under this program, this is recap. We were required to prioritize 3 things: manufactured home communities, immediate conversion customers, and lower income Vermonters. And we get to define lower income. So, as covered previously, we don't have manufactured home communities is not applicable. We only pass 1 right now. The entirety of it is considered served. We don't have any data to overturn that, and I don't think it will be overturned anyway. So that leaves us with number 2 and number 3. They were ordered the other way too in the RFA, but I put them this way because I think it facilitates the discussion. So immediate conversion customers, we have 152 the last time I checked, which was last week. So all of these, so again, the RFA requires us to prioritize these 3 things. Since they all qualify for priority service, we need to check if they're still interested in service. And this is actually kind of time critical because the application requires us to put the number of addresses that are immediate conversion customers that have committed to service, which means before this thing is due, which is next week, Friday at current, we have to reach out to all these customers and see if they still want service and are willing to commit to it. So that's a pretty fast turnaround for the customers. So I'll work with London Middlebury with some great urgency to get that survey out ASAP so that we can give people more than a day or 2 to think about it. But we obviously...
There have been a number of people who I believe have written in who have sort of supported an extension. I don't know where that stands, but just so you.
Yes, that's a great point. So we've it came up on the webinar yesterday. We asked for a couple-day extension because the actual application was published a couple days later, and then in Vacuda this afternoon we all unanimously said we could use another couple weeks to make sure that we can really do this properly, and because quite frankly, it's unlikely that too much construction will get done before the ground freezes anyway, and so let's rather have a little bit more time. But right now, I'm operating from the kind of worst case scenario that we have to submit this thing by next week, Friday. So anyway, so that's the fact that they need to have committed before we submit in order for us to give account for them to count for priority service, and also because we have to prioritize all of these 3. My suggestion is that we don't do any income checks for the purposes of this program, because if you have to prioritize lower income and you get to prioritize immediate conversion, people are qualifying under immediate conversion, so there's no need to make them jump through the hoops of lower income. I think we should enable them, we should make it optional for the purpose of offering a monthly subsidy, which is something that we've talked about previously, and that's a separate policy matter because we haven't yet voted that we wish to do that. I know it's been budgeted, but we haven't yet voted definitely to do it, and if so, at what level. Why is everyone leaving when I'm talking about this now? Anyway, so that's my recommendation on that. And then in terms of how we describe the specific measures to ensure the program resources are directed towards those who genuinely need financial assistance, this is a line in the sand, and you guys can feel free to change the number here. But I had a look at the number of addresses that were in the pipeline, and just they clustered, and there were a couple that were in the $900,000 range, but there were, I mean, it seems to me that if we use $1 million cutoff, that's pretty reasonable, that if someone has $1 million value property or higher, then they don't qualify for the program. We could make it lower if you wish, but that was just looking at the data that seemed kind of reasonable. Because again, you might have, especially in today's market, you might have a $700,000 house or $800,000 house that you inherited and your income isn't that high. And, we don't really want to overcomplicate things, and simplicity. So, and again, the comments or the discussion from last week around trying to make sure that we have general policy parity with the BEAD program. In the BEAD program, you could have a $20 million house and we'd pay for the entirety of your drop. So, Zapata.
I'm just wondering about what the public facing aspect of this is, because I think if we were to poll the public, what would be considered low income, that $1 million price tag would be pretty staggering. And so I'm just trying to see how that would be marketed and or explained as the rationale behind that cutoff.
This isn't a lower income thing. This is for people who are already in the pipeline. We need a way to make sure that we're not misusing public funds. And so this is basically a cutoff of that. And there's also the third tier, which is we have to prioritize lower income customers, not only now, but also into the future. And so again, if you happen to have $1 million house and you feel like you're lower income, you can with pleasure apply under the lower income one. But it's separate from the lower income. So this is for the people in the pipeline now. We would check with all of them to see if they still want service, but we would exclude from eligibility of paying for their drops anyone with a property value in excess of $1 million. That's the suggestion. So I'll continue. You guys can come back. Maybe you think about this, it percolates in your brain. So for the lower income Vermonters, this is for people who haven't not currently registered in order. And remember, there could be lower income people who haven't currently, lower or middle income people who haven't registered in order. And back to the point earlier of trying to create general policy parity with the BEAD program, which is covering everyone regardless of income. My suggestion is that we pick a relatively high threshold here for lower income, because I will die on this hill that conduits are a middle income challenge and not just a low income challenge. And the program does allow us to define this however we wish. So my suggestion is that we use 400% of federal poverty level. That's $106,600 annually for a family of 3, or participation in any of these programs, that's straight out of BEAD. I took out Lifeline because we don't participate in Lifeline, and so that would be a little bit awkward. So that's the first thing, is that they would fall under one of those, and they must also self-certify that this is the primary residence and that either they're renters or they have less than $1 million in liquid assets. So we're kind of hitting them for both things. We're kind of checking their income and we're requiring them to self-certify a couple things. Steve, you're muted.
CVOEO third-party verification, does we have to pay for that, or is that a service that they're offering?
They have, on at least 2 occasions, they have said that they don't want to charge for the service. And the last time I spoke to them, I think I covered this last week, I said, that's nice, but I'm going to build something into the grant program for you as a once-off, because I think there's probably going to be quite a few verifications in the first 6 months. So I told them if they didn't come up with a number, I'd come up with a number for them. And then once we have a sense of how many there are, once this program gets done, we can have a better sense. So that's my thinking, is that there wouldn't really be any cost, because whatever, we'll build something into the grant application. So not coming out of our operating revenue or anything like that.
Okay.
So I think that, the main discussion here is this 400%, is that appropriate? The 300%, by the way, was 79,000 something. And that to me seemed a little bit, again, we could use 350. That seemed a little bit low, because $80,000 a year for a family of 3, is, I don't want to say you're struggling to make ends meet, but you're going to struggle with a couple $1,000s discretionary income for a conduit, And so I felt like this one, at over 100,000, yeah, you probably could, but it's still not necessarily going to be the easiest thing in the world. And then above that, we have to have a line somewhere. So this is the one that seemed most reasonable to me.
Ellie, do you know what the other CUDs applying are going to do about this piece?
Nope. And as a matter of fact, this came out in today's Vacuda Legend policy that FX was suggesting that we all put our things together and come up with a shared best practice, which I think is fine, except for that we need to put out the details around some of these things, because if we're expecting people that are in the pipeline to commit to service, we kind of need to tell them the rules they're committing to, which doesn't really give us until the day before to be doing it. Now, if the program's extended, then I think that would be a whole different matter. And I think basically what I'm going to ask you guys to do at the end of this is to delegate me with the authority to make the final decisions based on what happens if the program is not extended. And if it is, then to take it back to you guys for policy finality. Because that way, we're not trying to have an emergency meeting to finalize things. But I think, based on prior conversations and how today goes, we're getting a sense of how we're thinking about things. And it seems like there's general alignments here between my recommendations and where you guys are going. Okay, so that's the lower income bit, and then this is the one where I struggled a little bit. So these are the three that we have to prioritize right now, and so if someone is not in the pipeline and they're over 400% of the federal poverty level, so if so-and-so enters an order on October 15th, we've submitted our thing. They make $110,000 a year for a family of 3. They're not lower income. Then what do we do? Right? Because again, the application lets us estimate the needs here where it's a barrier. So my suggestion is we have the same certifications as we had for the lower income providers, the lower income households, and then we have a cost sharing. And this is the sort of thing where I think might get refined as we kind of kick it through in Vacuda. Patrick Moreland from CV Fiber had an idea that we could have households specify the maximum amount that they could contribute, which is potentially a good idea and potentially not a good idea because it can create some weird incentives. And then also, how do you prioritize? Do you prioritize first come first serve, or do you prioritize lowest bids, or do you right? So I think that just for the sake of having a line in the sand, if the deadline doesn't change, this was the best I could come up with.
Yep.
Ellie, one question, would you bracket that they're over 400,000 of poverty level up to 600,000 in order to be part of the cost share? Like, would there be an upper ceiling to where that line in the sand would be drawn?
I honestly wouldn't, just because of, or maybe we put some sort of like a cap on the total thing. But, back to the idea of trying to have policy parity with BEAD or similar parity with BEAD, it's just so hard. We create so much complexity for ourselves if we try and get into the weeds of deciding who is, what are the rules that would make someone qualifying and someone not qualifying, Because it seems really hard to set some sort of a rule that's going to be 100% fair all the time. And you could always have an appeals process, but I don't really want to be spending the next year having, here's the exemption request of the week that we talk about in public session. So I thought it was simpler just to have a simple rule. But there's another thing down here, which let me just finish. So this is suggested requirements for all, is that number one, we require an easement for conduit from the property owner. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one, but just like we need to put it in writing. And then a minimum service commitment. So the VCB board, the RFA was silent on this. The VCB board resolution that I called have had a minimum of 6 months. My suggestion here, just a thumb suck, is that we have a 1 month commitment for every $500 worth of conduit or whatever that we're paying for. So with a minimum of 6 months. So the average projected cost, just pulling everything out of crowd fiber, the average projected cost per drop is just over $10,000. And again, there's, it's that that's not necessarily the mean or the median, but just to give you guys an idea, that would be about 21 months of service. And so that's something as well where if someone is requiring a really expensive drop, they're also going to be committing to being a customer for a really long time. So a bit of quid pro quo. And then we talked about this before, that if the homeowner wants a deviation from the lowest cost route, then we will allow that, but it needs to be at their expense, and they need to pay for that upfront, because I don't want to be in the business of the contractor getting mad at us that the property owner didn't pay them, right? So that's my suggestion of how to handle that. I'm going to mute because the phone's ringing. Thoughts? Okay, well, that sounds
Just, so,
encouraging.
yeah, no, my brain just takes a moment to process. So I have two questions. We don't need any type of legal contract for an overhead drop, only for conduit, correct?
Right.
Okay. Second is number 3, deviation, property owner's expense. What happens if we have a renter and the renter leaves?
Well, I still think if there's going to be a I mean, this may create a conflict between the renter and the property owner.
Right.
I mean, that's sort of implicit here, but I feel like as representatives of the taxpayer funds these things originated from, we can't be in a position of saying, sorry, renter, in order to accommodate you, we're going to, give your landlord a more expensive route around their vegetable garden or their flower garden or whatnot. So there could be some renters who we can't serve because the property owner won't allow a direct route and won't pay for the delta, but I really hope that's the exception, not the rule.
Okay, and the same question applies to number 2 is for the minimum service commitment, if it's a renter and they're say only in the building for 12 months, not the 21 that would have been calculated as part of that the $500 drop, et cetera, et cetera.
Does anyone know if it's possible to get insurance for something like this? Because this is how this would be, like, for example, private schools, you can buy tuition insurance in case, you move away halfway through and then no one is left out. I mean, it's a great question, Zapata. I don't have a good answer for it. Because ultimately, you can make someone sign something, but then, your ability to collect is really your ability to collect. But I would suggest we look and see if there's an insurance product here, and we can say, look, you're committing to this, and we'll send you to collections, and if you don't buy insurance.
And that may just be another level that we don't want to enter into, and we're working on good faith, and of the 100 renters that we connect, I'm being optimistic, 3 of them end up leaving where they are currently living and don't follow through. Is that really worth the added bureaucracy, paperwork trail, et cetera, and maybe it's not.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know how many renters versus owners we have. It's a great question. Back to simplicity. But it would be nice if there was some sort of a affordable insurance and we could just say, whatever, pay $50. I mean, you're getting thousands of dollars worth of benefit here. I mean, someone is, but it's costing us this, even if it's, the actual property improvement is mostly for the property owner. So I'll distribute this and you guys can think about it. But I think, as I said, the motion I'd be seeking now is to empower me to make, based on these guidelines in our discussion today, to make final policy choices along the lines of this, assuming that the submission deadline does not change. And then if the submission deadline is pushed out, then we can all think about this a little bit more and have the benefit of other review with other CUDs and come back with a revised version.
I so move.
Thank you, Nancy. That was a really long motion. Sorry, Sharon. It's a second from Shannon. Any discussion?
Just one other question. At our last meeting, we talked about the need, or I don't know if the assumed need or the idea of asking people to self-certify around income periodically. Is that what it was, Steve? I think that's what we were talking about. And so I'm just wondering, did you deal with that in this document, or how have you been thinking about that?
This document, I did not deal with that in this document because this document is about the once-off process of getting people drops. Yeah. And I think that separately, we should put on the agenda for an upcoming meeting the discussion of having a Maple Broadband monthly subsidy program, because especially for lower income Vermonters, which would probably be a different federal poverty level than 400%, we may wish to have monthly subsidies.
Okay. That makes sense.
And we need to have rules around that. And I definitely think that the 2 ACP qualifying households, that are in our that are getting a service right now or subsidy right now should be reevaluated, because it's been 2 or 2.5 years since they qualified, and the situation may have changed. And that's also a really good test case for CVOEO to be working through the kinks.
Okay.
But the being is that it's our program, or would be our program, and not a federal program, we could do something clever, like, we could have a we don't necessarily have to have a benefits cliff. It could be $30 a month for 200% and $20 a month for 300% and $10 a month for 400. I mean, depends on how much complexity we want to add to it.
Okay.
And last question, Ellie, is that for the lower income, we've specified that it's a primary residence. For the pre-sign up folks, we don't have that requirement, correct?
We do not have. Well, I didn't have that on the sheet, but that's actually a good point. We should consider adding that.
Can you clarify? I'm not sure I got it, Stefano.
So I'm sorry. So under the immediate conversion customers, we have the two A, B, and C, or AB. But under the low income, we specifically require that there's self-certification that is the primary residence. But right now, we don't have that as a criteria for the pre-sign up folks or the pre-conversion folks. Even though we do have other conditions for them that could still exclude them from being our focus right now.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I suppose I'm of two minds on this one, because part of the reason this is in here is that the RFA requires us to have, it has a primary residence consideration for MDU dwellers and mobile home dwellers, but it doesn't for pre-conversion or immediate conversion customers. And then on the other hand, like if someone, for example, if someone has a vacation home and they're willing to pay for a continuous 21 months of service, like, do we really care that it's not their primary residence? Again, back to the policy parity with BEAD. Like, we could care or we could not care. I'm kind of two minds as to how much we care.
Well, I think the motion is to authorize you to make up your mind.
Okay, well, thanks. That's great. That's so helpful. Shannon, do you have something you want to say in that regard?
I was just going to say that I don't think we care because they've already signed up and they're in the queue, and that whole clause is designed to push the people who are already ready through.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we have a motion and a second on the floor. We need to vote, and then we are going to move on because we do have other things in the agenda. So any other comments on the motion on the floor? All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay. That's all of you. Thank you. This is fun. Okay. Okay, so the next topic is board engagement in marketing. So we had Ashley from London Middlebury on here previously, and we've talked in general just about the notion of there's a lot of hours that it could benefit us being out in the community from a marketing perspective, but marketing is also not the only way that we can engage with our towns. Part of it is liaising with town clerks or whatever sort of, other ways could be useful. But we've talked about this before, I think as part of my performance reviews, just in general, we should spend some time brainstorming about what is the most effective use of the Maple Broadband delegates in terms of, first of all, we should define our objectives and what success is, right? And marketing is one element of that. And so in our weekly London Middlebury meeting or bi-weekly meeting last week, Ashley was suggesting perhaps we consider forming a community engagement committee of the governing board to really focus on this question of how do we do this and what does it look like and what are the next steps. So I thought I'd bring this up here rather than the governing board, and depending on how you guys think about it, we might add it to next week's governing board meeting. Unless you guys would like to be that committee. Shannon says no. But I think there's always a Venn diagram, and there's some people who are, like Ross Conrad comes to mind, who would probably love to be part of this committee.
Yeah. I think it's worth bringing it up and at the governing board meeting and seeing if there's any interest. In theory, I love the idea and would love to do it, but I have so many other hats that I'm wearing that I would not be able to do it well.
That's
hear ya.
pretty much where I'm at as well.
Yep, and that's only fair. I mean, you guys are spending, what is it, 3 hours a month minimum on executive committee. Zapata?
I'm just wondering, I mean, I think it's worth bringing up to the governing board, because I think that, how do I put this in a way? Up to this point, I'm gonna say, as a governing board individual, I've been feeling pretty useless, other than to listen to the information that you're bringing forth and then voting on that in representation of my town, right? And that's been the only way in which I've been able to contribute. And so I feel like I need to show up each meeting, because that is the one way in which I can contribute. So bringing it to the governing board, I think if people did want to get more involved, that this might be a viable alternative for them to see how they might be able to contribute more if they actually want. Now, we may find, because a lot of folks who end up being on boards end up being on more than one, because we're those types of people, and consequently we can't take on more than what we've already committed ourselves, which is to show up at each meeting and provide our vote and in-person attendance. So I do think it's worth bringing up to the governing board. On the flip side, whether or not the governing board is able to put together a committee, or at least we can solicit opinions, thoughts, suggestions from the board as to what we think would be successful within our communities, whether we are active participants or not. That came back to, like, I'm willing to go to my recycling center, every 3 months or every 4 months with the Maple Broadband packet. And somebody else might be like, well, I always blah, 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 and I could do this. So understanding what people's capacities could be, even if they don't want to be on a education, marketing, outreach committee. So that, I think, would be good, because that, if nothing else, I think it would feed information to the media folks to see what types of materials should or need to be developed. Because we talked about, like, I would love to talk about Maple Broadband, but I don't actually know what I should be saying for the town of Ripton, because it's going to be very different than what I would be saying in the town of Virgins. And so, that twist, like, we just don't know what we can and cannot say, or how to support what we're doing. On the flip side, I also feel very strongly that we should have a presence on Front Porch Forum in a very concerted way. Fidium, every single time I'm opening up Front Porch Forum, Fidium is there. And I would love to counteract Fidium with the title of, like, in a local alternative to the conglomerate. Enter into, but being very deliberate.
Well, yeah, I mean, just on that one, Zapata, the ads the Fidium buys are tremendously expensive. So
True.
we could consider it, but
That's
that
where
would probably
we
be
can
like
come in.
half
No,
of
no,
our
no,
marketing
no.
budget for
No,
next
no,
year.
no. If the marketing folks write the message, I can post it in my town for nothing.
Absolutely.
And I'm more than happy to do that. I mean, I'm very busy with other things, but that's an example of something
Yep.
that's.
Yep.
And it isn't that I'm so well known in my community, but I've been here for a long time. A lot of people know me, and so that's an example of a pretty low labor commitment that even someone as busy as I am can make.
And then I think all of the delegates on the governing board would be willing to do, because there's a reason why we're willing to actually invest this much time in supporting Maple Broadband, that we're happy to post it on Front Porch Forum.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, guys,
But they're
we've only got 20 minutes.
town-specific messages, as Zapata has said.
Right, yeah,
it's not a blanket message.
Yeah, it's a totally different message for Virgins than it is for Ripton, right?
Yeah.
And
Or
for Ripton, it might be,
Starksboro.
hopefully coming soon. Yeah, I don't even know what we do in Starksboro. That's a whole other story.
Well, it's a very important story, and it's one we really need to focus a lot of attention on.
Yep. But yeah, but that's, I mean, well, just a second on that, because I feel like that's not really marketing. I mean, we've hired the marketing firm to help us raise awareness and increase our take rate. This is not a Maple Broadband, the service provider thing. This is a Maple Broadband, the communications union district thing. So I agree with you, Nancy, but I think that's something probably for us as this committee rather than our marketing firm.
I don't understand why that would be the case, but we can talk. We don't have to talk about it tonight.
Okay. All right. So what I'm hearing is that sounds like there's general agreement this would be good to add to the governing board agenda for next week to talk about. And we'll call it community
Yes, and
engagement.
especially with a range of kind of examples from you know, a low an easy kinds of things that people might do to more labor intensive things. I mean, I think it'd be good to have a range of examples.
Okay, well, I'll see if we can get London Middlebury to come up with a range of examples before next week Tuesday. But I mean, I would really put that to the committee if people should, because I mean, they can come up with marketing examples, but community engagement is broader than just marketing.
Well, they did do some examples from
Mhm.
whether it's knocking on the doors or putting together a packet that I can have at the recycling place, or the really easy one where if they're putting together marketing packages for me to take to the recycling center, then that means that they've put something together for Ripton, which means I can steal language for the front porch forum posting. So it could go hand in hand. And I think that's where some of the marketing could be best developed, is more locationally specific, so that whoever is receiving that information could then decide or choose in the direction that they are most able to employ that information with some feedback.
Yep, that does make sense. So I'm doing a terrible job of clock management. We've got 17 minutes left, a bunch of updates and discussion of personnel policy, bylaws revision, and conflicts of interest. So I'm not sure how far you guys want to get into that next one. We had an email back and forth where I had a skim of the draft and I said, this is not consistent with my employment offer letter. And Steve asked me to update it. And I said, sure, I can, but that's going to take me a little while. So where do you guys want to go with this discussion for now?
Yeah,
And then the other part of that is the mandatory officer training.
Yeah, so my recommendation, we don't need to sort this out, and if we kick it down the road and we talk about it at our annual meeting, we got plenty of time. I think what I would propose is that regarding the personnel policy, Shannon's had a crack at it. I don't think Cy has yet, right, Shannon? Right.
No.
So I think we just ask you, Ellie, when you have an opportunity in the next few days to make the adjustments needed to align it with your higher offer, and then resend it out into the world. We'll chase down Cy and ask her to just take a look at it. I'd be happy to go through it and mark it up or whatever. I think at some point we need to get it in front of our group, but it's not ready. So
Right.
I think we can just shut Shannon.
Just for some context, I didn't expect it to be appropriate and ready yet. You know, it's basically a straw man, some scaffolding. It's largely borrowing from the Addison County Regional Planning Commission personnel policy that I helped update a couple of years ago. So there's definitely parts that are not appropriate for what Maple Broadband is, but I wanted to put something out there that we could then kick around and make it more appropriate, which was the original plan, having Jeff and Cy take a look at it and beating it up. So have at it.
Yeah, exactly. So so again, I would ask Ellie, if when you get an opportunity the next few days, it sounds like would be minor adjustments, but I think we need to make it work so that it's harmonized with your higher offer. And then at that point, we can get in front of some other executive committee members, and I can manage, you know, like I can send it on to Cy, et cetera. So I think that's sufficient for now.
Would you have time for that in the next couple of days, though, Ellie? Or not?
Not until after Monday.
After Monday. Okay. Is that okay, Steve?
Yeah. And yeah, well, we have months.
Okay.
So yeah, we're okay there. I think the only part of this whole thing that needs attention now is the conflict of interest, because we need to the officers have to attend the training session before I don't think I had it
25th
down.
of September.
Yeah. So I think the only thing that I'm okay with
And that's you and Shannon and
And Lynn and Adam,
Okay.
treasurer, clerk,
Right.
chair, and vice chair.
Yeah. So
And
I'm okay.
Lynn's shaking her head because she's traveling.
Lynn, is there an issue?
You're muted, Lynn.
She's
So
traveling.
we have to do this when? It has to
Has
be
to be-
before the 5th?
The 25th of September, it's supposed to be. It's an online training from the Secretary of State's office.
How long
Okay.
does it take?
I don't know. I haven't done it.
Yeah, I guess what I want to ask the group is, I didn't do a lot of research on this training, but there is a link that you can go to attend the training. According to the documentation, it's 45 minutes.
Oh.
And I want to propose that itself, it's an honor system. We report back to Ellie, who is going to be our oversight body related to this policy. After we've done it, with an understanding that we've got to do it in a timely fashion, we pass it on to Ellie so that we're compliant. We already have a conflict of interest policy on our well, maybe we don't have it, but we should have it on our website. So we don't have to be in a hurry to align ourselves, because I think the other thing I was hoping we could do eventually is talk with Shannon about not only revising the bylaws, and this is for later, revise the bylaws to harmonize with the statute for conflict of interest, and also ask Shannon to add some language about the personnel policy once the personnel policy is done. So that's to be done in a couple months too.
Yeah.
But to me, the only thing that we have to do now is make sure that our officers are trained. So I can, if you want, Ellie, if you want to notify each of us that we have to do it and send us a link and whatever you want, I'd be happy to do that communication to the officers if it would make your life easier.
That would be great.
Okay.
I would love to get that link
Yeah.
ASAP. 'cause
I can get it to you in 15. Well, once we're all done with this, in 15
I'm not
minutes, I'll
looking
send
at
it to you.
tonight, but I can do it tomorrow, or I can do it before I leave.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah,
can send it tonight, that would be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I think that all makes sense. Okay, so 12 minutes left. I'm going to move on. Lynn, would you like to give the update on the 24 audit?
Sure. So the good news is we did communicate with Bonnie yesterday about how it's going. She's in the process of reviewing her first draft of the audit report, and she is working towards getting that to Ellie, to me, next week in time for the Finance Committee meeting. Is that next week, the Finance Committee? Yeah, so the Finance Committee would be able to look at the draft report and make any comments, and we could get that back. And so if that all happens and the comments back to Bonnie happen rapidly, well, we can have the audit, but before the end of the month, which was
Wow.
yeah.
That's great.
Ellie, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I have to add is this, according to our bylaws, this needs to be approved by our governing board, which is obviously not going to happen. So we need to have, I already have on the draft governing board agenda the audit, and we're going to ask for a motion to delegate the final approval of that either to the Finance Committee or to the Executive Committee. I don't have a strong opinion about which one. You guys might, or we can simply leave it up to the governing board.
Apparently Shannon and I are both furiously typing in ethics training links.
Okay.
So Lynn, you should, if you check the chat box, one of us will give you what you need.
I'm
Yeah.
glad to see you guys care so much about our audit.
So
So
Ellie asked about this before, the audit thing, and so to me, what I would like to do is tell the executive or the governing board the situation that we're facing, which is that it's another item that's a critical path item. It has to be done. It has to be submitted by the end of the month. And if it isn't sent by the end of the month, speed evaporates for all intents and purposes. So it absolutely has to be done, and we can't approve it today because Ellie's not ready. So what I propose to do is ask the governing board in our meeting next week to delegate approval for the audit to the executive committee, and then Ellie will work as best she can to get us caught up to speed. I also hope at that point, I don't know when Cy comes back, but I would be a lot happier if Cy had a chance to give it a good hard look, since she was the previous treasurer and she could probably find anything severely bad. But that would give us, what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks or something like that. So I think that would be sufficient. How does that sound to everyone?
Yeah, I think it should be the executive committee because the finance committee is, it's not just people who are on the governing board and the.
Right.
Yeah, it's also a bit harder to get quorum.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so what we might
do,
we could make a decision on how we want to do that quorum, right? We could hold a meeting, we can have, we can choose a meeting, maybe set our next executive committee meeting for the 29th or whatever we want, so it's the day before it's due, and then we can review it in that fashion, or.
I think that's pretty late. That wouldn't work.
We have the one on the 22nd, so let's hope that we get the drafts mid next week, like she said at some point next week, and I said we have a governing board Tuesday night. It would be great to be able to send them a draft, and she said she would try. So maybe we get it by Wednesday. Finance committee meets on Friday, and
in the finance committee, those are like great sets of eyes looking at this, and those any comments from them, I think are. Those are good people to be looking at it.
I think when the executive committee approves it, it's got to be done before we approve it.
Correct.
So if we meet on the 22nd, but Ellie's still working on it, I don't think that's going to work.
I hope that whatever the proposals are, whatever the finance committee sees or what the governing committee sees, I think we just need those comments quickly. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of comments, honestly.
I don't think so either. I think we've been working with Bonnie so long, and we just did the 23 audit. I would be really surprised if her draft was anything other than close to final.
Right.
But it is a good point, Steve, that, if we're not ready with a final version by the 22nd, because that is our next scheduled meeting, we may want to have another emergency meeting.
Yeah.
We could do that.
And if we had to, it seems to me that, I speak for myself, but I think I probably speak for the executive committee, we all have a lot of trust in you, Ellie. And so if you sent us the day before it was going to go out and said, it's done, 100% done, I'm okay with it. I think it's perfect. Please approve and send us an email, and we can approve it via email.
Yeah,
I'm okay with approving it based on your sign off on it.
Although they may require, it may require a special meeting in order for that record to be official.
I think so. I mean, according to our bylaws, it's for the governing board. The governing board can delegate, and you guys can vote however you want. And the other thing is, we don't want to be leaving this at the very last minute because it needs to be filed with the federal clearinghouse, and Bonnie has to do some of that, and it takes a little bit of time. So I think we're on the right schedule here, and we'll figure out if we need to have an emergency meeting if there's more extensive errata or if it's simple things.
Yeah. Okay. For now, we're kicking it down the road by asking the governing board to authorize us to approve it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. 5 minutes left.
And before we ask that, Ellie's going to spend some time with the governing board, walk them through what she's done, show them where she has some more work to do, and that way they'll feel like they've got a good handle on it. So I think it'll be okay.
Okay.
Okay. So next item on the agenda, then Finance Committee. We have the next one scheduled for September 12th. I think the key focus of that is going to be the draft audit. And then other than that, whatever time we have left, we'll probably get into a little bit more review of the financial analysis in the BEAD scenario. And then I also distributed some other materials. So next time we meet, we'll have feedback from them. Old Town Road update, Steve?
The date got, the company that's doing this, the trenching already has 3 trenching machines in the state. And they're all working with Green Mountain Power apparently, and they're very, very busy. But they slipped the date, so originally it was going to be happening on the 9th. It was going to start on the 9th of this month. It got pushed out a week, and so now the trenching is going to be on the 15th. But all of our resources are lined up. Oversight is lined up. I want to have a conversation with our contractor to verify all materials are in hand, but I believe last time I spoke with them, that's the case. So, all green at this point.
Okay. All right. And 2025 construction updates. I don't have an update this week because it's been a holiday week, but last week, Syracuse said they'd be done with the slicing by the end of last week or early this week in the testing. So we have our construction meeting tomorrow. No, that's not right. We didn't have a construction meeting today. Wasn't on the calendar. Okay, anyway, sorry. I need to check in with them as to what's going on. We have our weekly Waitsfield meeting tomorrow. That's what happens in a short week is you miss a meeting you don't even realize. I must have put a stop date on the meetings. Anyway, so we should be very close to done with the current batch. And then we have the make ready you guys authorized last week. We got that into GMP. The clock started on that with the 60 days. I did hear some stuff back from the railroad people on the railroad boards, so they're starting to have a look at that, which is good. It's good to get some response from VTrans in under a week. Zapata will attest to that. They're great, and not much else to say on that one. Okay, and then parking lot. Don't have anything else on the parking lot. I do have a meeting with CVOEO for next week to go through the operations in detail, and as said before, we have some back office work we need to do with forms and records and so on to make sure we can actually operationalize what we have a concept of. 4:58. Okay, we're actually done on time. Anyone have any other business? No? All right. So governing board next week, Tuesday, and then our next scheduled executive committee is the 22nd. I will go ahead and update the website, and I'm going to update well, actually, Steve, you're going to check with Cy first before I do that.
I've already sent her an email. Yeah, so I should know something pretty soon.
Okay, so once I get the good word from you, I will make the changes to the invite for those of you who have the invites in your calendars, and I'll make the change to the website.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Good meeting today. We covered a whole lot, but I think it was really good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Thanks.
take care.
Bye.
Have a great trip.